Have you ever taken your young child for a haircut and ended up with a screaming, hysterical mess who won't sit still, wriggles in the chair, hits the hairdresser and runs around the hair salon? Even worse, have you ever tried to cut your young child's hair yourself? If you have, all kudos to you. I'd be way too scared to put a pair of scissors near my toddler's hair. Today we're going to talk about what we can do to get a toddler or a young child to the hairdresser and make it fun, enjoyable, and a hopefully calm experience where your child sits still, well, let's not get carried away, stays on the chair while the hairdresser works their magic. I was teaching grade 1 and the children were around 5 years old, and I frequently had children coming to school with misshapen fringes, and one actually had the front of her head totally shaved. Now, these weren't actually the result of a hairdresser visit. It was usually the child's own effort at cutting their hair. So please remember that your child might not like others cutting their hair, but at that age they often love to give it a go themselves. So hide those scissors. Now today we're talking to John DiCicco. John's been my hairdresser and friend for at least the last 30 years. We've had a lot of haircuts and colours together, and not all of them worked out. John's currently keeping me blonde instead of grey, so best friend ever. I took my children to him for their haircuts from when they were very young. He was amazing with them. We rarely had tantrums or behavioural issues because John was able to help me prepare them, and once they're in the chair, he used not just his hairdressing skills, but also his personality skills to keep them entertained. I'm Kate Mason, and welcome to Parenting and Personalities. This is the podcast that connects you to the ones you care about the most. Hello, John. Welcome to the show today. It's great to have you here.
Hello, Kate. Thanks for having me.
Now, John and I have been friends for at least 30 years, and John's been my hairdresser for that long. And when he first started out, he was actually a hairdresser that went to people's houses and businesses. Did you go to as well?
Yes, businesses,
yeah. So,
lots of weddings.
Yeah, so he and his wife were amazing back then. When did you first start hairdressing?
We're not so amazing now. No, that's right. We were back in the beginning. That's right. Well, unfortunately, it was about 38 years ago, Kate,
Okay.
which does say that I'm a bit older than you thought I was.
Yes. So now you're in a salon, and how many years have you been working in a salon?
We've actually had our salon this year will be 30 years.
My goodness, I'm feeling really old now. So John and I have had many haircut adventures, sometimes too short fringes, those kind of things, but we've lived
Everything
through
you
that.
wanted, but it looked great anyway, didn't it?
That's right, I'm sure it did. So we're going to chat today about children and haircuts and getting your child to become accustomed to a haircut and what to do if they're not so good coming to the hairdresser. John's got lots of information about many different things, so we'll try and stick to our topic for a little bit and then we'll see how we go. So John, first of all, if I've got a young child who is screaming and yelling and doesn't want to come for a haircut, why might they not want to come?
Look, I think, Kate, one of the biggest things is we've got to realise that I think especially these days, firstly, going back to, say, our day of having a haircut back in the dark ages, we really didn't go to a hairdresser. Either mums and dads cut our hair at home or somebody cut our hair at home with the bowl on it. Everyone had the same look. And
we were discussing this, and it was so true.
Exactly, and Kate had no teeth at the same time. Going to a salon really wasn't a child's place to go. So, and if we did, it might have been once or twice a year, really. Whereas these days they do. It's far more of an experience that we bring them into the salon as well. However, we're also living in a generation which is... me. So mums want to come to the salon to have time on their own. They don't want to ruin it by having their children. Actually, I like them not bringing them in anyway, Kate, actually, personally. However, so they're not becoming familiar with that environment. So where you might be able to build a relationship with that child, you don't get that opportunity to do so.
No.
So that's, I think, partly one of the reasons. I think there's many, but the other thing is when they do come to the salon, we expect them to sort of sit, and we have to sit them very still, and that's probably one of the worst things to expect a young child to do. So it all gets a little bit fearful,
Yes.
I think.
And what about, we were talking about scissors.
Yes, the
before.
scissors.
Tell me about
Well, let's face it. I mean, if your little one picks up a pair of scissors, let's say hypothetically they're 1 or 2. No, darling, give me those scissors. Those scissors can really hurt you. You can cut yourself with those scissors, and you might explain those because they're dangerous. Full stop. And then suddenly, if I was to pick up a pair of scissors and cut your finger with them, it's going to really hurt. But where does a child know that actually the hair is not like their skin and that they can't feel the hair being cut? They have no clue that that's going to stop and start at hair. So there's this person standing over them, which is also very threatening, in a chair, trying to be still, or sitting on a mum's lap, towering over them, and now we're going to actually cut them and hurt them with our scissors, and they're going to sit still.
Really good to know.
Yeah.
Think about, because, I mean, you cut my children's hair, and because you're such a great hairstylist and personality, I think you probably entertained them the whole time while they had their hair cut. However,
but we also had a relationship.
We did.
They were familiar. They were familiar with me, literally from birth. So that was a little bit different.
Yes, true.
As far as that goes. But then if those children were coming in at each time prior to any hair cutting for them with a parent or a sibling, then they would get that opportunity to build that little bit of a trust.
Yeah. And that's really true. That's really true. It's like I often say about the first child and second child going to school. The first child, it's a new experience. The second child's seen it all, and they're usually much more relaxed about what the process is. So what can you recommend that a parent might do in order to prepare their child to go and see the hairdresser?
Kate, that's a very good question. I think one of the main things is I think we just need to be aware that they may still have some fear. It may not break it all down. This is not a blanket approach. However, I think you need to tick all those boxes and go, well, we did our best and it still went wrong. So I think definitely in the lead up to them needing a haircut, bring them in, let them see the environment, but let's not do anything with them. They might get a lollipop, they might play with our water spray, they might get our neck brush. They love that because they can tickle mum with it. And, so it suddenly becomes a bit more of a fun experience. Now, not every hairdresser will do that.
No.
Some hairdressers don't have that intuition, or maybe they're young and they don't even have children themselves.
Right.
So they clearly will not understand. So I think it's also in a bit of a selection. So if you have a younger hairdresser and you're really happy with them, but they don't have children, maybe if you think it's going to be a problem, maybe you need to find a hairdresser that's actually got children and will warm to them so much better.
And understands that small child behaviours as well of not wanting to sit still and moving their head all the time.
Yeah, totally different.
So would you perhaps do things like get them to experiment with water bottles at home and stuff like that?
Absolutely, because, you're spraying them with water. It's often a bit uncomfortable. I know you mentioned to me yesterday about, children that have sensory issues, and my wife and I are both hairdressers. And when I spoke to Mandy about that, after, she just looked at me and she said, oh my goodness, we've never heard any of that in training, and we've never trained hundreds of apprentices over the years with the idea that you may have a sensory person, whether it be child or adult, in the chair. And how do we work with that? I'd never really thought about it until you mentioned it. So when you did, the sensory issue, you've got the water spray going over them. It's uncomfortable. Hairdressers will automatically tie up the cape, so tight around the neck. It doesn't matter if you're going blue because you're going to take all that haircut home with you. But of course, it gets itchy with kids. Then they start to move. And once they start to move, we start getting annoyed. So the whole experience can go wrong. But, there's certain parts of that we have to accept, and we can't break down. But there is some knowledge is power, isn't it? So with a bit of extra knowledge, you can be a bit more nurturing.
Because you've also got the sensory overload of hair dryers. You've got the the smells of all the
Yes.
strong chemicals,
Yes.
particularly if you're actually working with colours and stuff next to that child or with that adult. even.
Definitely.
So really
it's
the
a very
best-
new experience for them.
So the best part for an adult bringing a child in is actually to explain to the hairdresser what's going down for that child as well.
Yes.
Because it does make your job so much easier than having to sense intuitively, oh my goodness, I shouldn't be doing this or that. To actually know ahead
Absolutely.
of time would be a really valuable thing for you as
Very
well.
much so. But Kate, after your question to me yesterday, my wife and I discussed that actually that is something that we need to put in place in actually asking the question when we're booking.
Yes.
Is there any, sensory issues or is there anything that we need to know to make the experience the best we can make it for you? Because you come into we don't smell those smells anymore. We actually don't know what that smells like. We don't know what it sounds like. There might be 3, 4, 5, 10 blow dryers going. Hairdressers are generally loud, vivacious people. We go on stage when the curtain goes open in the morning. Yes, Kate, yes. I know you wouldn't believe it. And so, of course, somebody walks in, hi, Kate, top of our voice. It's all very, that is our environment. We just take that for granted. But when you're dealing with a child, maybe we impact that experience a bit more than we could.
Yes.
Maybe we could improve that too.
And because, like you say, we're feeling, bright and energetic and loud voiced.
Absolutely.
Yes, that might be quite a scary experience. It might be scary for an adult as well.
Yeah, it might be scary, but then you learn to process that as an adult differently.
You process
I once had a lady many years ago, Kate, that was really honest with me when she came in and she said, look, I'll just let you know, I actually have a very, very horrible phobia of cut hair. And I said, oh, I've never heard of this before. And I thought, now I don't know whether I'm actually being filmed as a, gotcha type sort of program. And she said, so if you wouldn't mind when I'm sitting, do you mind if I just don't talk and you just cut as fast as you can and get the cape off me and I don't want to look and I just want to go.
Wow.
And she was actually very scared. Now, this is a woman in her 40s. And so I did very, very quickly, but she clearly had those sensory issues. Then I wondered, well, where was the seed of that got birthed? Has she always been like that? Or was it through a bad experience? I don't know.
I was working with a parent who was worried about their kid because they didn't focus in class on the details and they were worried they were going to get low grades. And then this child was given a project, which was something he could run with, and his attitudes and grades went through the roof. He was in his element. Do you and your child need to find their point of difference so they can fly? Let me help you unravel some of the enigmas of their personality and enjoy parenting a kid that you actually understand. After all, parenting's supposed to be fun. Let's chat. thepersonalitycoach.com.au. So when you're in there with a small young child and they're screaming and yelling, carrying on, you've actually got some experiences of back in the day when you, as an inexperienced apprentice, had to actually deal with a haircut like this.
I have. This is one that always will always stay with me because it was a very bad experience, and I was probably 16 at the time. Trying to act like I was 20 and being told I had to act confidently and maturely. And I did a family regularly that would come to the salon. And when their little boy, it was time for him to have a haircut, the father wanted him to have his hair shampooed because it was a bad experience at home.
Oh.
So it was much better for us to do it and ruin his life and ours than doing it at home, I think. So he would make me put him into the basin. The child would then already start to scream. We've piled up towels so the seat is higher. So the father, because he was screaming and literally quite violent in his behaviour with fear, that he would hover over the child with his knee up, over the chest of the child to hold him into the back of the chair and both hands around each jaw, holding him into the basin as he's screaming. And I had to actually manage that. And back in those days, If that's what a parent wanted to do, then you would just do it. I mean, now I would not even open that door. I would be saying, I'm sorry, I'm not going to do that.
Yes. And so did he come back?
He had to. He had no choice.
Wow.
He would never speak to me. I found him to have a lot of social problems, but I don't know what that came from. I mean, in my environment, he had social problems. He may not have anywhere else. But I do sometimes think to myself, I wonder where he is now as an adult in his probably 40s. And what's it like for him now to have a haircut? I can't imagine that he would ever find a place to really enjoy it.
Yeah. That's tough. And in those days, that behaviour was acceptable.
It was acceptable.
Which is really sad.
Yeah.
So when you and I were talking about things before, we were also talking about head lice, because head lice happens in young children and school children. And I do have a story about head lice. And I took Cassie for her haircut with John and Mandy, and Mandy was doing her hair this particular day. And I'd noticed that Cass had been a little bit itchy, and I'd looked around her ears and I hadn't really seen anything. And Mandy just lifted Cassie's hair up at the back and showed me the live lice crawling through it. I tried not to feel like a bad parent, and you tried to tell me I wasn't.
Of course.
But you know, in all of that, head lice can be prolific at school, and you can have it many times with your children. Tell us how we should not feel quite so bad about it.
Well, it is, first and foremost, the lice like a clean head. They actually don't like a dirty head. It makes it a bit harder for them to move around and scratch and bite. But look, it's really, really common, very easily to be treated, and just another one of those things like a cold. You know, really, let's not say it's a bit like COVID, you know, it's just another flu, but no, it is very, very common. And I think when that does happen, again, you hope that the hairdresser's intuition is enough to go, oh, look, this is a situation we have, and be nurturing about it rather than go, oh, my God, you know, they've got head lice. Because when we do have a case of head lice, it's actually horrible for us, because we will often have to make you feel a bit like a leper, because we have to sterilise very quickly. We'll often drop the cape off the client onto the ground so it's not touching anything, so we can contain it. So there is that part of it where we have to treat it really well. However, again, that can set a child up to be another, you know, I don't want to go back, I'm embarrassed. What happens if I have that again? I've been scratching, and they'll often start scratching because they are a bit frightened about it. I'm scratching now, Kate.
Yes, I know
you know, and I'm so glad your viewers can't actually see it. But even after all those years of hairdressing, I still think, oh my goodness, it's got me.
And so with head lice, I tried several herbal things, and they didn't seem to work.
No, unfortunately, at this point in time, to my knowledge, there still isn't anything. Right. I mean, a lot of people will often do things like, you know, put conditioner on it, bucket loads of conditioner, which tends to suffocate them. The one thing that I have heard of, and it makes a bit of sense, is by the time you've treated it and you've done all of that, once the hair's dry, go through literally the finest sections, like a 0.5 centimetre or, you know, 5 mil section, where you're actually ironing it through piece by piece with the hot irons, your straightening irons, something like your GHDs or something, and because it'll kill them, it'll cook them. But if there's still some eggs, the eggs will reproduce again in another 7 days. So I think what people often do is the lotions really smell. Kids, again, it's a trauma. Then you've got to get that comb through. It pulls, it hurts. Sensory children, it must drive them crazy. But it has to be done. But then parents will go, oh, but I did do that twice and it'll be fine. But if you do not stop that incubation period and do it every week for maybe 3 to 4 weeks, you only have to have one egg which will hatch, and off it goes again. So...
Great advice. Thank you, John, from the Head Lice Queen. So the other things that we were talking about are the processes that parents nowadays with choices are giving their children for haircuts, and even, you know, their young teens that we perhaps wouldn't have done or had offered to us when we were children ourselves. And the thing about giving children choices, which I talk about in earlier podcasts, that children are overwhelmed with choices these days, and parents are often asking children, we have swim schools and they say to their 3-year-old child, darling, when would you like to swim this week? And you kind of look at them and go, for goodness sake, you're the adult. You're making the decision here. Put it in your diary, honey, and go off and make that decision. So children are being overwhelmed with these small decisions that are actually adult decisions to be made, really, because it's the adult that's going to determine when they're going to bring them. So what's that like in the hairdressing industry?
I think, Kate, if you have a look at, there's so much these days in the media about, how, let's say it on girls, but it's also boys, how they view their bodies, what they need to look like to be loved and accepted and how they're beautiful. And so we're constantly being battled with that at the moment, but that also does come into play in our salon where parents are, I guess, maybe badgered by their children. They want to have highlights. They want to do this. They want to do that. And because a lot of parents these days want to be a parent and be their child's friend and not their parent, they want to be liked. They'll go, oh, okay, darling, well, maybe just a little bit and maybe we'll just do a few highlights and things like that. And that's what starts that journey. But you're feeding into that insecurity rather than say, look, if nobody likes you because you don't have the right haircut, what does that matter? You're a beautiful person. We were talking yesterday about Kate's daughter, Cassie, has got the most beautiful, stunning long hair. And all through her hair as a child, she would often have those lovely blondes and golden highlights trickling through, which were very natural. So, of course, we try and imitate that whenever we do anything artificial, which to the client's satisfaction. But I remember when Cassie wanted to do that, when all of her friends maybe were doing it, and I sort of said, no, look, you start that journey and, you often can't stop it. So wait until you're really ready and wait until mum and dad's not paying.
Exactly right.
Exactly right.
Unfortunately, she took John's word and I've never had to pay for a colour. For Cassie, mind you, I've been doing mine for 40 years. So,
isn't yours natural?
And the other thing that John was talking about also was parents asking their children what kind of haircut they might like, and also very young children and when they would like to come in as well.
Absolutely. So, of course, the child will come in and they'll say that they want it like, some singer or something. But, when you explain that haircut, oh, no, but I don't want it cut around my ears. But if you have a look at that picture, little Johnny, it is cut around the ears. Do you want that? No, I don't like my ears. I want my ears covered. So by the time you get to the end of the beginning of the haircut, you've already taken a half an hour. Now, we don't charge necessarily for that. So children are still not being charged adult prices, but in actual fact, we're doing more of a consultation on a child because they're indecisive. They don't know how to make those decisions. They know what they want, but they don't know how it's going to be on them. And quite often you'll do it, and then there's tears because the feeling of wearing that is different to the feeling of thinking that they'd like it. Yeah. If you put a piece of clothing on, like you've got put a dress on, Kate, and you might go, oh, I thought that looked lovely on the rack, but I might just have to keep going on that diet just for a few more weeks before I can get in. And so suddenly you make the decision, no, well, I won't be doing it. A haircut, it's there for a little while.
No coming back.
No, there's no coming back. So, of course, it does make our job harder rather than, years ago, sit in the chair. You never got asked how you had your hair cut. You just got your hair cut. And that was it. So, and I'm not saying that we should return to that.
And we shouldn't return to the bowl cut.
No, not really. No. However, what we do need to do is understand that there is a bit of a balance with that. And I don't think children need to have full decisions on anything. Often schools will have policies on what they want the children to have and not, but the parents will allow them because they don't want to say no. In breaking those rules, then the children have to come back, get it recut. Doesn't fit the criteria of school. So it sets everybody up in a game, really. But there's a lot more choice now in a child. And then I mentioned to Kate yesterday about parents that might be in a divorce situation. So little Sophie wants to have her hair coloured. Mum and Dad had always decided that no, we won't be doing that until you get a job, and it's too expensive, and it's this and it's that. But suddenly, Mum or Dad will then bring the child in, and they'll do that because they do want to end up being good cop. And then, of course, there's arguments between the parents saying, well, look, I was paying, it was for her birthday, it's got nothing to do with you. it starts to set all this game up, and we get caught in that game, unfortunately.
Yeah. They're the things that you actually don't see happening.
No, you don't see happening. And I don't think they see it happening.
No.
It actually is happening every day of their life. It'll happen that somebody will go and get them a mobile phone because I want to call them. I don't want to speak to them through your phone. There's all this, oh my goodness, you're setting everybody up to lose. And children are so vulnerable with that. We see vulnerability, I think, when we hear it in the media. I know you're a specialist with this, Kate, so you see it in a different sense. But I think the majority of us hear a child is so vulnerable thinking from a predator.
Yes.
But I think a parent can be a predator, but in a loving way, in that way, thinking that they're doing the right thing, but in actual fact setting up many years of behaviour. And it can often start with, oh, well, it'll make them feel amazing. You know, having their hair done, and you think, there's a lot of other things that can make a child feel amazing and leave the hair to a later date.
Yeah. Very wise words. Thank you for joining me today, John. It's been really great talking to you, and I'll hopefully talk to you again. Oh, hang on. One more thing. I wanted
to say one more thing. Sorry, I meant to say it before when we were talking about what can make a child scared. And I think we also, as a hairdresser, and the parents endorse this as well, is sit still or he might cut your ear.
Oh, yes.
So we really endorse that and go, you know, oh, no, if you don't sit still, it'll hurt, you know, if that scissors are sharp. And of course, we're, again, as we said, expecting that child to sit very still. So there are a lot of things in our words that we really need to not put in there at the beginning and explain that actually when you cut hair, it doesn't hurt. You know, in the first place, it's not like cutting your finger. It doesn't have a feeling. Your hair doesn't have a feeling. So I think, you know, bringing them into that beginning of the hair cutting time, have lots of those little conversations. Even if you know, get a bit of hair off the ground sometime and cut it with the scissors or something. Not to hopefully that they go home and do their brothers or sisters or dollies.
No, which I do mention in the beginning of this, the amount of children that used to come to school with their fringes trimmed very oddly. Yeah, so some people aren't scared. Some children are not scared of scissors and quite happy to take it to themselves.
We always decided when our kids went to kindy, Kate, that we were hoping that one of our boys would cut their hair because they were so used to this process that when the parents said, you know, your child has actually cut my child's hair at kindy, we'd say, look, the first haircut's always free. But never happened.
A great note to end on. Thank you so much for your time today, John.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you for listening, everybody.
So 5 top tips for taking your young child to the hairdressers. Predictability. So what is going to happen? Keep the child informed. Bring their comfort toy. Praise, encourage and distract your child during the haircut. If noises and smells are overwhelming for the child, see if you can block out or change these factors wherever possible. Now, when you're at home, touch your child's head often. A friendly ruffle of their hair, giving it a brush, or a gentle massage will familiarise your child with their head being touched. And the other thing is, do know when to give up. Sometimes when your child's having their hair cut, it's just not the right day or time for everyone concerned. You should never be made to feel embarrassed by your child's behaviour at a hair salon. A haircut can be a very confronting experience for many children, and most will grow out of it if treated with compassion by the stylist and yourself. I'm Kate Mason. Thank you for listening to Parenting and Personalities. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd love it if you could leave a rating and a review that would help others learn about the podcast. If you're interested in discovering more about your family and your personality types, you'll find my book, Who is This Monster or Treasure in My House, on Booktopia or Amazon. If you have an episode idea, please send a note to thepersonalitycoach@gmail.com. Many thanks to our producers at Stories and Strategies, and we'll see you next time.